Welcome back. And I mean, Cyndi Lauper, come on. How is that not the greatest way to enter into Inside Hollywood with Hawk Koch? Let's take it over to Zoom, where I believe Hawk and Freda are.
Hi, everybody.
Hi there.
This is going to be a fantastic Inside Hollywood. I'm so thrilled once again that Hawk is going to be hosting. And just a special shout out to our guest, Billy Ray, who is not only just a superb writer, director, producer, but he is an incredible advocate and supporter of MPTF. Just want to let everyone know that when we started the Care Calls program, Billy was one of the first ones to make calls, and from that, we got so much more support. So I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to both of you. And Hawk, it's all over to you now.
Well, thank you, Freda, and thanks, Jen, for, of course, doing an amazing job with what you do. And today I'm excited because I get to talk to my friend and super nice guy, Billy Ray. As most of you know, my dad was in the business. Well, Billy's was too. His dad, Rick Ray, was a top lit agent, Adams Ray Rosenberg, for those of you in the home who may remember that. Billy was nominated for an Oscar for writing Captain Phillips, and he wrote a small little blockbuster called The Hunger Games, and he recently wrote and directed, he's directed several movies now, the Showtime miniseries, so if you haven't seen it, you must. It's called The Comey Rule, and not only is it enlightening and helping you understand what was going on at that time, the performances are brilliant, and Billy, sorry, I gotta turn off my phone, Billy did an amazing job as a director. There are lots of writers in town, but few of them have gotten more than 1, 2, or maybe 3 movies made of what they do. Well, Billy's 20 of his screenplays have made it to the screen. That just tells you a little bit of an idea of the scope and size of his talent. And I have to second what Freda said about Billy being a giant supporter of the Motion Picture and Television Fund. Thank you, Billy, for that. And now, welcome Billy Ray. Come on in, Billy.
Thank you, Hawk. That was a lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to live up to your faith in me.
Are you kidding? I've known you a long time, and I love that we're here. First question, before we get to the 100 films, when did you know that you wanted to write? Or did you ever know that you wanted to write? Or just, how did that happen?
I always liked writing. I wonder about the origin of this too. You know, is it something that someone's born to do? It's hard for me to know. I think part of it is I got praise for it when I was pretty young. I mean, even at high school age, people seemed to respond to things that I wrote. And I think I gravitated towards the praise. It was something I knew people would pat me on the head for doing, so I just kept doing it. And found out that it's something that I really, really love, and I do have things to say about just about everything. So it was a very good fit for me. When I was younger, I thought I'd be a journalist. I actually went to Northwestern for a year because their journalism school was the best. And it was during that year that I realized that the writing I wanted to do required me to be out here.
And growing up, what was your relation? Now, your dad was an agent.
Yep.
Were you going to movies? I know for me, I stayed home and watched $1 Million Movie on Channel 9 on Saturday mornings. Were you watching films and into film as well as writing?
Very, very much so. You know, my father represented Alvin Sargent, you know, who wrote Julia and Paper Moon and Ordinary People.
Excuse me, and didn't get the credit for The Way We Were, because I was on that movie, and his screenplay made that movie. Sorry, go ahead.
You know, and he represented Frank Pearson, who wrote Dog Day Afternoon. I mean, he represented some of the greats. Attica. So I always had that. I remember the first movie that taught me the power of movies. When I was 12, I had been going to movies, you know, for as long as I can remember. The first movie I ever saw actually was The Jungle Book. But the first movie that ever taught me the power of movies in 1975, my mom took me to a theater. It doesn't even exist anymore, called the Lorena, and in the Valley, and we watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
At 12. Wow.
And I came out of that theater changed. And I remember getting into her car. She had a pale yellow Cutlass, Oldsmobile Cutlass. And I remember having the thought, oh, movies can do this to you. I didn't know that. It was the first time it ever clicked for me, that if a movie is great enough, it can actually, it can flatten you. And I felt very strongly that would be an amazing thing to be able to do.
So to that end, why do movies matter?
Well, Pablo Picasso once said something great. He said, art is a lie that tells us the truth. And I think that's what movies are, essentially. Even fictional movies tell us who we are, tell us where we are as a society, tell us where we've been, and in some cases tell us where we're going. When I first had a child, I now have two who are 24 and 19. But when I first had a child, one of the ways that I knew how to parent was by just trying to be like Atticus Finch. I literally would ask myself, what would Atticus Finch say right now? And then I would just say that thing. And it turns out it was always the right thing to say. Well,
thank God you picked a great
yes, I picked the right
to emulate.
That's what movies can do. They teach us what our best self is supposed to look like. And I always will believe in the power of movies. And when we emerge, God willing, from the pandemic, I think people will go back because I love TV, and most of the work I'm doing right now is in TV. But there is something about being in a dark room with 1,500 people around you, with images coming at you that you can't control. It is as close to dreaming as you can get while awake. And I think people will always need that kind of experience.
I love you, Billy. As some of you know, that's my mantra, boy. Let's watch movies in a movie theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get to the 100, are there writers that you admire and that you've wanted to emulate? Because I know you do a lot of adaptations of pretty good material, some okay material that you've made better. Are there writers throughout, other than Nunnally Johnson, of course, who maybe you go, wow, that's,
Well, I always say that I don't admire any of my contemporaries because I'm too busy grudging them their success. It just takes too much time. But yes, of course, there are lots of contemporaries of mine that I admire greatly. But in terms of the writers that made me become a writer, I would go back to the greats of the 70s. I would absolutely go back to William Goldman, probably top of the list for me. If there's a Mount Rushmore for screenwriters, Bill Goldman's certainly on it. Patty Chayefsky, absolutely incredible writer. Alvin Sargent, as we mentioned. Coppola, who won his first Oscar not as a director but as a screenwriter of Patton. Although this is a controversial thing to say given how the world has turned out, but Woody Allen, certainly one of the greatest writers ever. Billy Wilder and I.A.L. Diamond, incredible. If I go down that kind of list, those are people whose work I've been shooting for it ever since. When I was 19, I saw The World According to Garp, directed by George Roy Hill, who's one of, I think, the most underrated American director ever. Brilliant.
For those of you who don't know, you also did a small movie called Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah, and The Sting.
Yes, and Sting.
And Slapshot. George Roy Hill was incredible. But when I walked out of Garp, and I was floored by that movie, and I wrote a letter to Steve Tessage, who had adapted the book, had written the screenplay. He had already won an Oscar for Breaking Away. Anyway, so I wrote him a letter, and because my dad could get it to Tessage's agent, it got to Tessage. And one night I'm sitting in my apartment, 19 years old, I'm a sophomore at UCLA, my phone rings, and it's Steve Tessage. And we had this conversation, and he had loved my letter. And at the end of the call, he said, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to you. I can tell you're going to write the kind of movies that I'm going to want to see. So can you imagine at 19 getting that from Steve Tessage, who then tragically died way too young, shortly thereafter? You know, that kind of pat on the head, that can fuel you for 20 years. And it never left me. You know, writers have pulled me along ever since I started, and I've been, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants for 32 years now.
So you were writing, and you became successful as a writer, but did you also always want to direct, or was it something that you kind of fell in?
No, I actually found writers who talked about wanting to direct to be pretty annoying. And I didn't want to be that cliche, because every writer was running around saying, I really want to be a director. And I hate the idea of being, you know, common in that way. But then I was working on a movie with our dear friend, Greg Hoblet. It was called War, which I had written. Right. And we were in Prague in January. And it was an exterior scene. And everybody on that set was freezing their ass off. Prague in January is ridiculously cold. And I was sitting in a trailer, warm and comfortable. And something about that felt wrong. I remember thinking, I'm not suffering enough for my art. I'm not out in front of this movie in the way that Greg is. And sure enough, the movie came out, did not do well. Greg got crushed. And I went off and wrote 3 more movies. And something about that really troubled me, the idea that when you're a writer, you can always hide behind the director. And that director will always take the bullets for the movie, good or bad. And it was time to find out if I was grown up enough to do that job. So I decided, there was a script I had written, a tiny independent movie called Shattered Glass. It had no nudity, no car chases, no gunfights, nothing blew up. It had none of the craft-driven stuff that I knew I didn't know how to do. It was just, can you get tone? Can you get performance? And it was time to find out if I could do those things. And then it turns out I loved the job. You know, writing has been very, very good to me, but writing is a solitary existence, and directing is so much more fun. You're just surrounded by people all day long. You're leading. You're trying to inspire people to give you their best. You get to say please and thank you 1,000 times a day to let people know how much you need them and how much you value them and how much they're helping you. You get to see performances get better. You get to see sets get built. It's a nonstop evolution, and everyone's there to help you. It's incredibly humbling and inspiring in that way.
I just have to stop for 1 second, because for those of you who don't know Billy but are meeting him for the first time today, this is a man of giant character.
Oh, thank you.
Really. And we don't have enough of it in Hollywood, and we certainly don't have enough of it in Washington right now. But thank you, Billy, for being the person you are.
Right back.
Now, are there directors, now that you're directing, are there directors that you go back and go, wow, who are those directors?
Well, Billy Wilder, Spielberg, of course, Kubrick, John Ford, George Roy Hill, for sure, Coppola, Pakula. Those people have just floored me. Yeah, there are a lot of them. There are a bunch of them. And then there are people who have made, you know, what we're about to go through is, I made a list of the 100 greatest English-speaking movies of all time. I don't call them my 100 favorites. I call them the 100 greatest because I think I'm the authority. And I get to decide what the 100 greatest movies
are. But it's English-speaking. There's no Jules and Jim. There's no Fellini. Right, just all English-speaking.
There's nothing like that, because I don't think that list can actually be made. I mean, I think once you're into, you know, European films and Kurosawa and, you know, all the great films coming out of Latin America, there's just no way to make that list without doing a terrible disservice, not only to some filmmakers, but to entire countries. So I limited myself to English-speaking movies. but I got it right.
I went through the list, and
Okay.
you may not know this, but there were only 3 directors that got 4 movies on your list, and it was the first 3 that you mentioned.
Correct.
Wilder, Spielberg, and Kubrick.
Yep.
Got 4.
Yep.
Woody got 3.
Yep.
A lot of people got 2.
Mm-hmm. Polanski
But
got
any rate, just so you know, you were close.
Polanski got 2. Coppola got 2. Pakula got 2.
Koch got 2.
Koch got 2.
Not as a director,
No,
but I worked on Chinatown and Heaven Can Wait, and my dad was the producer of Manchurian Candidate. So the Koches got 3.
It's funny, as I was looking over the list, I thought Hawk probably worked on 60 or 70 of these movies. That is the level of my regard for you.
Thank you. I worked with a lot of these people that were on these movies.
Oh, yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the list from 100th on down to the top 10.
Okay.
And we'll talk about why, and what's this, and if you remember something, you have a favorite moment in a movie, or
Sure.
is there a piece of dialogue that you remember that made a difference? And I think everybody will have fun with that. And I've got a few trivia questions.
Before we start, I want to make sure that anybody who's out there watching has a pen and a piece of paper in front of them, or a laptop, or something they can write on, because I want to see what movies they write down before we start, and then we'll see if I've done justice to those movies. I can tell you right now, Gone with the Wind is not as high on my list as it is on yours, and I'm very happy to discuss why that is. But we'll get there.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get there. Tell me about your criteria now. Before we get going, what was the criteria? Did you write them all down and then give them a number? How did you do it?
Well, I started with what I thought was number 1, which we'll get to. The criteria for me, it's hard to just say, okay, this is an excellent movie, because there are a lot of excellent movies that don't make it onto this list. I could only list 100. I would say that the biggest criterion for me is, can I watch this movie over and over and over again and still be in love with it? The other night, for no reason at all, I watched Grapes of Wrath, beginning to end. It's spectacular. That movie is spectacular. In a truly great movie, I spend a good deal of time saying, how did they do that? How did they do that? And every one of the movies that we're going to talk about, on some level, I still feel that way. Doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, I still watch it with a little bit of wonder.
Well, I have to tell you, I've looked over the list now for the few days since you sent me the list. I have seen every single one of these movies, so I felt really good. Sometimes you go, gee, I never saw that one. I've seen it. So let's start with the first, going from 100 down to 90.
Yeah, give me 10 at a time.
Yeah, right. Number 100, which I may have put higher because it's one of my favorites, The Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank is great.
Bull Durham.
Yep.
Finding Nemo.
Yep.
American Graffiti.
Yep.
Inglourious Bastards.
Fabulous.
Risky Business.
Great.
Angels with Dirty Faces.
Completely underrated movie.
And I will tell you, this is one of the trivia questions I'm going to have. Everybody, you can answer the trivia questions, and Bob Beecher and Jen will have gifts for you if you get the right answer. Who was the director of Angel with Dirty Faces? Can't go to IMDb. Who also directed one of the top 5 movies of all time?
Okay, and I'm not allowed to say, right?
No, you're not. They have to come up. Stagecoach, John Ford.
Fabulous.
Fargo, the Coen brothers, and 12 O'Clock High, Henry King. So let's talk about, well, first of all, I was going to say, that was my question, is the director of Angel with Dirty Faces.
Yes.
So,
All right, so let's talk about Angels with Dirty Faces for a second.
Okay.
Angels with Dirty Faces is a spectacular movie. But what really gets it on this list is the last 5 minutes of the movie. It is one of the most insightful endings I've ever seen in my life. Pat O'Brien asking Jimmy Cagney to do what he does. And Cagney saying, no, 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 I won't do it. And then doing it. And the movie leaving you to wonder why he actually did it, although I suspect we know. And the effect that it has on the kids. And then the very last line that O'Brien has says, come on, boys, let's go pray for a boy who couldn't run as fast as I could, is so mind-blowing because, you know, when I do a fair amount of guest lecturing on screenwriting, film schools all over the place. And I used to do it in person, now it's Zoom. But I always tell them, anyone who tells you that there is a difference between character and story does not know what they're talking about. Character and story are the same thing. Your story is the evolution of your character. And the evolution of your character is your story. Well, here's this movie that basically tells you in its last line how true that is. It goes back to character at the very end of the movie and says, look, had I been the one caught and had he been the one that made it over the fence, maybe we switch places. Maybe I wind up in the hot seat. It's so good. It's so spectacular. It understands human nature so well, and it's so entertaining. It's got Cagney saying stuff like, what we don't take, we ain't got. That's just fantastic. I absolutely love that movie. And very, very proud to have Inglourious Bastards on this list. Tarantino, that guy does nothing but swing for the fences. He's
usually hits home runs.
And he's such a ballsy director. Even when I don't love his work, I absolutely admire the bravura of it. And Inglourious Bastards, I think, is just spectacular.
And American Graffiti, really, for me, it was made, I think, in 71 or 2 or 3, somewhere in there.
Yep.
It so brought me back, because that was my generation.
Right.
And it really was a seminal movie for me. And as a matter of fact, there's a few movies that aren't on the list. And I want to bring up one that was a seminal movie.
Okay.
A whole generation. Okay. And I wondered what your take was.
Sure.
It's called Easy Rider.
Yep. Okay, so here's my deal with Easy Rider, okay? I saw it in undergrad film school at UCLA. Obviously, I recognize the power that it had and the timing, the way that it caught a moment in our history. But just straight up filmmaking, I just don't think it's that great. I'm sorry. And it's not a movie that I could watch 5 times and never get tired of it. So for that reason, I had to ding it.
Okay, that's fair.
Thank you.
The first movie that won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay isn't on the list. And I can watch this one over and over again.
It happened one night. I got to say, it happened one night.
There you go.
May be a great oversight here. There are only 3 movies in history that won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress. And that's It Happened One Night, Cuckoo's Nest, and Silence of the Lambs. And the other 2 are on the list.
Right.
I may have to go back and reconsider It Happened One Night. I don't know. It feels a little dated when I watch it. I don't know that I could watch it over and over again. And I don't know what movie I would ding. So here's what we'll do. Let's you and I keep It Happened One Night in our pocket.
Okay.
If we come upon a movie that I suddenly say, I think I gave that movie too much weight, maybe we can just slot that in there.
Okay.
But I wouldn't, there's no movie in that top 10 that I would move out.
No, not the top 10, but...
I'm sorry, in my bottom 10. There's no movie in my bottom 10 that I would move out to make room for It Happened One Night. I wouldn't move out 12 O'Clock High, or Fargo, or Stagecoach, or Angels, or Risky Business, Glorious Bastards, American Graffiti, Finding Nemo, no way. Bull Durham, amazing. Shawshank, no way.
Oh, Jen has a question.
I just want to offer, I will be the one keeping notes here, and if people are going to call in and give angry comments, I'll buffer as much as I can. But
Yeah, that's fine.
just saying.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
I
Thanks,
can,
honey. All right, let's go to number 90 down to 81.
okay.
Pulp Fiction,
What's that?
Harold and Maude,
Huh.
Rear Window,
Yep.
Diner,
Yep.
The Killing Fields,
Ooh,
Last Picture Show, JFK,
fabulous.
Raging Bull,
Yep.
Inside Out, which I love, and I love Pete Docter, Back to the Future.
Yeah, okay. So let me just start with Raging Bull. There's a number beside it which will tell you where AFI put that movie in their top 100. And I'm sure.
24, number 24.
Okay. So I know everybody freaks out over Raging Bull, and Raging Bull is amazing. Okay, it's great. But Raging Bull is a movie that you admire more than you feel. To me. I remember Raging Bull when it was up for Best Picture against Ordinary People, and everybody was, completely losing their minds over Raging Bull. And I thought Ordinary People was a better movie. I thought it was much more moving. I thought it was much more revealing about human behavior. It stuck with me. I have one movie poster up in my office, and it's not a movie I wrote. It's Ordinary People. Just because I think it's, for one thing, we'll get to Ordinary People in a second. But the other movie that I want to talk about in that group of 10 is JFK. I know Oliver Stone is basically a crazy person, but I'm going to tell you, if you were going to teach a class in directing, just the craft of directing, and by that I mean the number of arrows in a director's quiver and how they are used to conspire to tell a story, I don't know that you could find a better example of directing than JFK. It is so magnificently mounted in terms of lighting, pace, sound, film stock, music, performance, makeup, hair, effects. It's mind-blowing how well directed that movie is. And like I said, I know the guy is slightly nuts. God bless him. I once went to do a director's commentary, a DVD director's commentary. And I happened to walk into the studio right after Oliver Stone had done his director's commentary on JFK. And Stone recorded 12 hours of director's commentary on a movie that I think is 3 hours and 15 minutes. So that's who we're dealing with here. But I just think JFK is incredibly, incredibly well done, and a movie that I could watch over and over and over again, if only to see the Donald Sutherland scene, which is 18 minutes long, and which Sutherland did in one day.
That's plenty for me, man. Great stories. The next 10, Body Heat,
Oh, yeah.
Terms of Endearment,
Oh, bad.
Alex 17,
Unreal.
Sophie's Choice, Fatal Attraction,
Yep.
Babe,
Awesome.
Reds,
Great.
Paper Moon,
Great.
The Omen by Dick Donner,
Mm-hmm.
Broadcast News.
Oh. Okay. So a couple of these, for me, are wildly underrated movies. Broadcast News is one of the 10 best screenplays ever written. It talk about character being story. It's just
Now, is that Brooks?
yeah, it's Brooks.
What I thought, yeah.
Everybody in that movie got nominated for an Oscar. I mean, everybody, and he did not get nominated for Best Director, which I'm convinced was just jealousy that everybody had because he had won 3 Oscars for Terms of Endearment. I just made, as you said, I just made the Comey Rule and had the privilege of working with Holly Hunter. She played Sally Yates.
She was brilliant.
And all I did off camera was talk to her about Broadcast News. I think that movie's mind-blowingly great. The Omen, incredible. Paper
I have
Moon,
to just shout out my pal, who we've lost a long time ago, Jerry Goldsmith, was nominated for 18 composer, best score. The only one he won was for The Omen.
Wow.
He didn't win for Patton. He didn't win for Chinatown.
I know.
Anyway, just shout out to Jerry Goldsmith.
We can have a whole conversation about the Chinatown year in terms of the Oscars, because the most stunning thing about that year, 1974, the Best Actor nominees, look them up. It was Nicholson in Chinatown. It was Pacino in Godfather Part 2. Then there was Dustin Hoffman in Lenny. There's one more that's just insane. And then
Art Carney.
Art Carney wins for Harry and Tonto.
Okay.
And I'll never get over it.
So there's a great story here. I was lucky enough to be sitting behind Jack. Okay. At the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And Chinatown's nominated for 11 Oscars. And at this point, we've only won one. Bobtown.
Yeah.
Right? Godfather's winning everything.
Yeah.
And now is it going to be Pacino or is it going to be Nicholson? It's going to be Pacino or Nicholson. And the winner is Art Carney. And I leaned forward and I said, Jack, I am so sorry. And he turned back at me, he said, that's okay, Bullhorn. He called me Bullhorn because I had a loud voice. That's okay, Bullhorn. I'm a shoo-in next year for Cuckoo's Nest. And he won the next year for Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh my God, that's just classic.
Classic story, yeah.
That's a great story. Okay, so just a couple other movies in this list, because now we're getting to movies that that I would throw myself in front of a train over. Fatal Attraction is a perfect movie. Absolutely.
I just watched it again.
And I'm sorry, another criminal Oscar ripoff here that Glenn Close did not win that year. She lost a share from Moonstruck. And nothing wrong with that performance. It's lovely. But what Glenn Close did in Fatal Attraction is just next level. Babe, Sophie's Choice. You could make the argument that Sophie's Choice might be the best acted movie of all time, between Meryl Streep and Kevin Kline and Peter McNichol. I mean, it's unreal how beautiful that movie is. And an incredible score by Marvin Hamlish, who killed it. And that was Pakula not working off someone else's script. Alan Pakula wrote and directed that movie. Incredible work. Terms of Endearment, what are you going to say? That's, it beat Right Stuff for Best Picture, and should have. That's how good it is. And Body Heat, oh my God. Oh my God. Lawrence Kasdan, just stunning level of work there. And maybe the sexiest movie ever made. Possibly.
Pretty much.
With another insanely great score and just beautifully shot. And all right, let's keep going.
We're getting now 70 to 61.
Yep.
Pretty good movie. And for those of you who, another trivia question, what was the song in High Noon? Just, if you guys know, send a chat to Jennifer. What was the song in High Noon? High Noon, A Face in the Crowd, which, another trivia question, they say that Lonesome Rose was really the prototype because of what real live television personality? Do you know that one? I don't know if you know that one, Bill. Do you know that one, Billy? Well then we're not going to give it a trivia question. Arthur Godfrey.
Oh, wow.
Arthur Godfrey was supposedly the biggest shithole.
Okay.
Any rate, Stalag 17.
No, Solid 17 was in the other list.
Oh, sorry, wait a minute, I missed. Oh, I know, it's called Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind. The Sting.
Yep.
Full Metal Jacket.
Insane.
Stella, Streetcar Named Desire.
Yep.
In the Heat of the Night. The Incredibles. The Maltese Falcon. And E.T. Boy, that's 60, 61 to 70. A lot of those are in the top 10 for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Okay, so a couple things about that. We should start with Gone with the Wind because I know this is heresy for many people. What have I got it there? Number 63 or something?
Gone with the Wind is number 68.
68. Okay. I think I'm being charitable. I know on the AFI list, where'd they have Gone with the Wind? Like number 2 all time or 3?
Quattro.
4. Okay. Let me tell you something. Okay. It's on the list because it's so epic. But Scarlett O'Hara is the most annoying character maybe ever. Okay. She's got Rhett Butler. This guy is so cool. And she won't shut up about Ashley, who is a nothing. He's a 0. I literally, I don't get it. I don't understand why everyone freaks out over Gone with the Wind. First of all, it's a pro-slavery movie, so, you know, you got to lose some points for that. But just on a strictly character level, what the hell? Who in the world thinks that Ashley Wilkes is a better catch than Rhett Butler? So every time that she walks past Rhett Butler to get to Ashley Wilkes, I want to reach through the screen and strangle her. So fuck Gone with the Wind. That's my personal vibe. Okay. And if I really had courage, I would knock it out of the top 100. If I really had courage, that's where I would put It Happened One Night, and we could solve everybody's problems.
Okay.
Beyond that, as I look at the rest of these movies, you know, Facing the Crowd, this is a tip of the cap from me to Bud Schulberg, who wrote that script. It's incredible, and Bud makes another appearance a little farther up the list. One of the greatest screenwriters ever.
I got to work with Bud Schulberg.
Did you really? On what?
I got the rights to the Woody Hayes story, the
Oh, wow.
football player, and Bud wrote the screenplay, and I got to hang with Bud. And the same thing happened. I don't know if this happened ever with your dad, but the same thing happened to Bud's dad. B.P. Schulberg was the head of production at Paramount.
Yeah.
When Bud was a young kid, and every Christmas, Uncle Clark and Uncle Carrie and Aunt, whoever, Katharine Hepburn, Auntie Catherine, they all were at their house, and they had gifts, and oh my God, it was the greatest Christmas. BP got fired, and the next Christmas, none of them, they were no longer relatives. They did not show up. When my dad was head of Paramount, there was a room with a pool table and a wet bar. There were so many gifts. John Wayne sent a gift that went to the ceiling. I've never seen so many gifts in my life for anybody. And when Gulf and Western bought Paramount and my dad got fired, you could put a tractor through it. There wasn't one present. So just some of you who might remember what kind of place we work in Hollywood, that's what goes on. But Bud was one of the great screenwriters, and
Bud was absolutely incredible. So this is where Kubrick makes his first appearance in Full Metal Jacket. Just an unforgettable movie, and structure.
How about the performance of a drill sergeant? He wasn't an actor.
No, he was incredible, and Vincent D'Onofrio is incredible, and Modine's incredible. And the thing was shot in London, which is just like, that's just mind blowing. The Sting, absolutely great movie, another George Roy Hill movie. And that was written by David S. Ward, who I think was 26 at the time. And
Major League, David S. Ward.
And, High Noon and Streetcar.
What about the first time you saw E.T.?
I had a watch that played the theme song. E.T., I think it's the first Spielberg movie I have on the list. It's magical. I did a lot of work in my 20s and 30s with the Braille Institute. I taught a class there, and then I started working one-on-one with one individual student who wanted to write a novel and needed a sighted person to help him edit it. So I got to know this guy very, very well. And his name was Richard Weaver. and we were talking about E.T. and he said, "Oh, that moment where Elliot takes off on the bike," and I said, "Well, forgive me, but you're blind. How did you know that Elliot took off on the bike?" He said, "The music." And I thought, oh my God, that's a pretty good compliment for John Williams.
That's great.
Yes, pretty good.
All right, we're going to move to number 60 down to 51.
Okay.
Number 60, produced by Howard W. Koch, directed by John Frankenheimer, with a screenplay by George Axelrod.
Yep.
Nominated for an Academy Award for Angela Lansbury, The Manchurian Candidate.
Stellar.
Another trivia question for those of you out there. What was the playing card that Angela Lansbury used to trigger Raymond, her son, Lawrence Harvey? Please let us know what that trigger was. Manchurian Candidate, Silence of the Lambs, another Best Picture winner.
Hi, Bob.
Some Like It Hot,
Okay.
MASH, Hannah and Her Sisters, another Woody, Vertigo, which just ran again recently, Patton, which I have to watch at least once a year. A movie I got to work on as my first movie as executive producer, as well as AD, Heaven Can Wait, and Modern Times.
Okay. So Modern Times is there as sort of a catch-all for just Chaplin in general. I happen to love that movie. Manchurian Candidate, Silence of the Lambs, you can't argue those. Some Like It Hot, it's just shockingly good. Heaven Can Wait is, to me, I don't know, just in terms of sheer movie star charm, I don't think you can beat it. I don't think you can top what Warren Beatty does in that movie. I mean, just being a movie star. And
that was his first picture as a director.
I know, with Buck Henry, right?
Right.
Hannah and Her Sisters is amazing. Yeah, Vertigo, I'm not the first person to mention Vertigo. I will tell you, I'm now getting a little soft on MASH. And I'm starting to think if I've got MASH way too high on this list. And
I got Elliot Gould on the phone. What? Excuse me. Oh, no.
And I'm going to circle that and give it some more contemplation. I think I've overdone MASH there, because the truth is, I tried to show it to my 19-year-old son during the pandemic, and he's a very discerning film watcher with incredible taste. And it did not move him at all, and he didn't think it was funny. So I may have to re-evaluate that one. What do you think?
Well, Elliot and I did about 4 movies around that time. So he became, and still is, a very close friend.
He's amazing.
And I love Altman movies.
Okay.
Nashville, loved it. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, loved it. But MASH, again, was about a time in one's life.
Yep.
And I think the reason it caught a chord as a television series, again, was for the same reason I thought it was a great movie. Yep. Is that those characters in that situation, that horrible situation, reminds me of that great moment in Paddy Chayefsky's Hospital, where the nurse is on top of the guy who's bleeding to death, saying, "If you don't give me your Social Security card number, I can't take care of you." It's one of those absolutely ridiculous moments.
Yeah, I'm going to rewatch it. The thing about MASH is the most powerful anti-Vietnam War statement of all time, and never says the word Vietnam, because they said it
because it's Korea.
Right, they said it in Korea,
yes.
But it, of course, released during the Vietnam War and became this very powerful part of that conversation. But again, just 10 great movies.
All right, we're moving on here because we've got quite a bit to do.
And we're now in my top 50.
Top 50, here we go. 2 Sidney Lumet movies right in a row. Dog Day Afternoon and Network.
Yep.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
The Candidate.
fabulous.
Toy Story, definitely. The Sound of Music, I got to work with Wise, too. Being There, I got to work with Ashby. Tootsie, I got to work with Pollock. The Best Years of Our Lives, and Lawrence of Arabia. Now, Lawrence is usually up there in the top 10.
Yes. Okay. So where did AFI put Lawrence of Arabia?
5.
Okay. It's another shockingly overrated movie because the first half is maybe the best movie ever made. It's incredible. And the second half makes no sense. It just completely peters out. It had no narrative drive at all. So, all right, I'll let it in my top 50 because people have such a reverence for it. And because it has that incredible Robert Bolt line where someone asks Lawrence, why do you like the desert so much? And he says, it's clean. That's pretty great. That got it on the list. But as I look at the other ones, would I take Lawrence of Arabia over Best Years of Our Lives? No way. Tootsie, Tootsie for me is Sidney Pollock's best movie. Being There is shockingly great. Hal Ashby. Sound of Music, I don't think I need to defend Sound of Music. Toy Story, so great. And I have several Pixar movies on this list because Pixar's making better movies than anybody else in the last 20 years. The Candidate, another wildly underrated movies. One of Redford's best performances. Oscar-winning screenplay by Jeremy Larner, directed by Michael Ritchie. Incredible movie. Raiders. There's Spielberg again. And Network and Dog Day. Those are two of the best screenplays ever written. And those are Sidney Lumet at his absolute peak. Oh my God, was that guy great in the 70s?
It's unbelievable to me when I hear movies being made today that shot 75, 85, 100 days. Sidney Lumet, 30 days, 34, 36.
Yeah.
And boom, it's like, I think Eastwood does the same kind of stuff.
Does.
He shoots them fast.
I owe Lumet a huge debt of gratitude, not just as a film goer, but before I directed for the first time, I sat down and I read his book. It's called Making Movies. It's right over my shoulder. And in it, one of the things that he said was, every time he goes to the set to make a movie, he thinks, this is the time I get unmasked. This is the time they realize that I'm a charlatan who has no idea what he's doing. And I thought, okay, if the guy who made Dog Day Afternoon and Network and Serpico feels that way, then I guess it's okay for me to feel that way and to feel a certain kind of imposter syndrome, which you always feel when you direct a movie. You always feel like, all right, for some reason they're listening to me, and as long as they're still listening, I'm going to still tell them what I think we should do. But I know I'm not smarter than the grip. That kind of imposter syndrome, you never get over it. But knowing that Sidney had it made me feel a lot better.
It's a great story. Sidney Pollock, who I did several movies with, was being asked questions about the end of The Way We Were. Sidney, how come you shot that? How did you know to shoot a low shot on Barbara and Bob when they get together in front of the Plaza Hotel? It was so brilliant, and he came off stage and we were talking and he said, you remember, Howie? He said, we had to shoot up because we couldn't get the cars down below to get the modern cars. So it's exactly to your point.
Yeah, I was doing a Q&A once after a movie I directed called Breach. And at the end, there was a shot where cars go off in opposite directions. And this guy came up to me and he said, it was so brilliant how you had them drive off in the shape of the cross. And I said, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you noticed. What are you doing? That's the thing about directing. You don't need to be a prick. You don't need to go out and actively seek credit because you're going to get credit for everything anyway. You're going to get credit for things you didn't do. So you might as well be generous with your cast and with your crew and make sure that they are feeling loved and that they are feeling appreciated. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to come up to you and tell you, oh, wow, your grip did a great job. They're going to credit you. So you're going to get all that. So give it to them while you're shooting.
excuse me, one grip I will give credit to is a guy named Art Brooker, who was the key grip on Deliverance.
Oh, wow.
Everything in the rocks, in the water was Art Brooker. Art, if you're listening up there, buddy, you were amazing.
Oh, my God.
All right, we're moving on to number 40 to 31. My Fair Lady, George Cukor. Tevye, Fiddler on the Roof.
Yep.
All That Jazz, one of my favorites.
Incredible.
2001.
Yep.
West Side Story. Treasure of Sierra Madre. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Wow, wow, wow. The Doomsday Machine. Dr. Strangelove.
Uh-huh.
Godfather 2, which, funny enough, a lot of people would have put higher.
Okay, but AFI has it exactly where I have it.
I know. And The Bridge on the River Kwai.
Okay. All right, so now we're getting into a whole other level, right? If Bridge on the River Kwai, you could put that in anybody's top 10 and nobody would blink, right? Just a stunning, stunning movie.
And for a movie that didn't fall apart at the end, got even bigger at the end.
Totally agree. And I don't love all David Lean movies, but
We heard.
man, do I love that movie. Godfather 2, you know, if there had never been a Godfather 1, Godfather 2 would probably be in my top 10. But, you know, you lose points on this list just for not being the original. It's incredible. It's got a structure, a writing structure that's unlike anything I've ever seen before. You know, I'm never going to say a bad word about Godfather 2. Strangelove, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You know, I love me some Capra. Treasure of Sierra Madre. You want to talk about just human behavior? Incredible. What's his character name? Fred C. Dobbs?
Fred C. Dobbs.
Fred C. Dobbs. You know, West Side Story. Unbelievable. 2001, completely seminal movie that changed movies forever. All That Jazz is another one of those movies. It's there's so much talent on that screen. It's so beautifully shot. It's so beautifully edited. It's just incredible, and a real anti-hero at its center, and yet you care about them completely. Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, I have a thing for Fiddler, and maybe that's partially because I was raised Jewish. But I will say the idea of that movie, this is a comparison you won't hear often, but I've always believed that the great TV show Downton Abbey was just Fiddler on the Roof for non-Jewish people. They're the exact same story, okay? You've got a guy at the center.
Tradition.
Who's trying to figure out how much tradition to hold on to and how much to lean into the new world. And he keeps talking to God saying, like, how far can I bend without breaking? And what makes him go there is his 3 daughters. That's exactly Downton Abbey, right? Each of his 3 daughters pull him a little farther away from tradition, and he keeps trying to hang on. You know, he's just Tevye. And the reason Downton works is for the same reason that Fiddler works, because at its core, we all get it. If you are going to be a nation of immigrants, which the United States clearly is, despite what Donald Trump may want it to be, if you're going to be a nation of immigrants, each immigrant in that story has to come to their own calibration about how much of my old self do I hang on to and how much do I leave behind to become a purely American me. And that's what Tevye is dealing with, and I think that's why it strikes the chord that it does.
Did you ever want to talk to Julian Fellows or ask him anything about that?
I would love to talk to Julian Fellows. I also love the fact that he wrote every episode of every season. That's also something I'd like to do next time I do a show, God willing. And then My Fair Lady, you know, I mean, it's just delightful.
The irony,
yes.
for those of you who may not remember, but everybody was talking about Audrey Hepburn winning the Oscar from My Fair Lady, and Julie Andrews did it on Broadway,
Yes.
and everybody was upset that Julie Andrews didn't get to play the role. Julie Andrews ends up winning the Oscar for Mary Poppins.
That's right. And I can tell you, everybody that I know that is of a certain age group is still pissed off that Audrey Hepburn got that part. Like, if you went to go talk to my Uncle Freddie or my Aunt Bonnie about My Fair Lady, they'll still say, no, Julie Andrews should have played that part. She had it on Broadway, and she could sing. You know, Audrey Hepburn wins an Oscar, and it's not her voice.
Right. Marnie Nixon.
In terms of the movie itself, the storytelling in that movie, it's just wonderful.
All right, we're going down to the last 30 now. Number 30, which, man, it's always in my top 5. So, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh yeah.
Grapes of Wrath.
Yep.
Bonnie and Clyde. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Singing in the Rain. I just got the chills. Ordinary People.
Yep.
12 Angry Men, who I've always wanted to do a remake of, because I think it's so brilliant. And it's especially with jurors today, what's going on. On the Waterfront. The Right Stuff, and Manhattan. And for those of you who, trivia, who was the cinematographer of both Annie Hall and Manhattan? Write it in.
All right, so let me tell you something about the cinematographer of Annie Hall in Manhattan. He was also the cinematographer of Godfather, Godfather 2, Godfather 2, The Paper Chase, Clute, and All the President's Men. So let's just take those 7 movies, okay?
Excuse me, he also did a movie called Bad Company, Jeff Bridges' first movie, and I was the AD.
I hear you, but let's just rewind those 7 movies, okay?
Right.
Paper Chase, Clute, All the President's Men, Annie Hall, Manhattan, Godfather 1, Godfather 2. One cinematographer shot those 7. Do you know how many Oscar nominations he got for those 7 movies? Zip. 0. Because they all thought he was a prick. He was a New York cameraman, and the LA cameramen didn't like him, and he didn't get nominated until he shot Zelig, which I think was 83 or 84. But if you're going to make a list of the greatest cinematographers of all time, if he's not the top of the list, he's in the top 3 for sure. You got to mention him with Greg Toland and some of these other guys. Stunning work, and there's never been a better looking movie than Manhattan. So as I go down
movies with him.
So as I go down the rest of this list, this is another one of those pockets of 10 where you could make the argument about any of them being top 5 all time. And I know people don't generally think of Ordinary People in that way, but it's that good. And another way to think about Ordinary People is it's the greatest monster movie ever made. It's the most perfectly structured monster movie ever made. In a monster movie, there's a monster, and the hero doesn't know that it's there, and hears about it, and then says, no, it's not really a thing, and then realizes, okay, maybe it is a thing. I'm starting to see bodies piling up, and then realizes, oh my God, there is a monster, and then realizes, oh my God, the monster is in my house. Now what do I do? That's Ordinary People. It's perfect. Absolutely incredible screenplay. 12 Angry Men.
Alvin Sargent, sorry, for those of you.
Alvin Sargent, of course. 12 Angry Men, probably the least visual idea in the history of cinema. It's literally 12 guys in a jury room, and yet it's electrifying. It's incredible, riveting. You can't look away from it. Cuckoo's Nest, again, I've already talked about Cuckoo's Nest. That movie destroyed me. Bonnie and Clyde. I still don't understand how those performances happen. They're incredible. Arthur Penn's best movie by a long shot. And unless I'm remembering it wrong, that was written by Robert Benton and David Newman.
Written by Robert Benton and David Newman. Benton went on to direct this movie I talked about, The Bad Company, Kramer versus Kramer. He won 2 Oscars.
Places in the Heart. Places in the Heart.
Places in the Heart, he won an Oscar, yeah. But on the set was Bob Town. Bob came to the set. Bob was friends with Warren.
Right.
And I've done several movies with Warren, and I must say that sometimes he can get in his own way, but there isn't anybody who loves movies more or has who is so focused on what he wants that it takes him forever to make up his mind.
Right.
But yes, Arthur Penn did an amazing job. I believe Warren had an awful lot to do. Warren was the producer of that.
He was the producer, and remember, Bonnie and Clyde gets released, does no business, right? And Warren gets Warner Brothers to re-release the movie.
That's Warren.
And then it becomes this phenomenon.
Yes.
I absolutely love that movie. And On the Waterfront, another Bud Schulberg, Elia Kazan partnership. That Brando in that movie is nuts. He's so great.
And Eva Marie Saint. Oh my God.
And Eva Marie Saint, I got to meet her once and tell her how much I loved her work in that movie. And then, Singing in the Rain. If I were going to make a list, someone asked me to do this once, my 3 favorite movie scenes of all time. One of them is the title number from Singing in the Rain. Just seeing him do that and seeing how many long shots there are in that movie. This was not like quick cutting to make someone look like they could dance. This was him. And I think he had 102 fever the night he shot that scene. Gene Kelly, that whole movie's a masterpiece. It also, by the way, is the first movie that my son ever watched beginning to end. When my son was like 2 years old, we always had videos around and he would watch pieces of things. And then one day he came downstairs and Singing in the Rain happened to be on TV. And that kid sat there and watched the movie from beginning to end. I'm telling you, he was 2. And it has a very special power for people of any age. Absolutely incredible movie.
I can't argue with any of it. We're moving to the top 20 now.
Okay, when we get to the top 10, I want to do them one at a time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely. Number 20, Butch and Sundance. Another movie I was fortunate enough to work on, Chinatown, which I'd move up, but I'm prejudiced. It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh my God.
Cabaret. Rocky.
Yep.
Kramer versus Kramer, Robert Benton.
Yep.
Jaws, changed the way we watch movies.
Yep.
Citizen Kane, changed the way we watch movies. All About Eve, and A Man for All Seasons.
Okay, so I want to take a little more time on this one because so many of these could easily be in the top 10. Easily. It's really hard to keep All About Eve out of the top 10. Oh my God. Just on every level, that movie is so good. The writing is so good. The characters are so interesting, beautifully directed. And
Did Nicholas write it as well as direct it?
Yeah. And All About Eve came out the same year as Sunset Boulevard. Imagine having to choose Best Picture that year. My son and I, we still debate whether or not they got the decision right. Man for All Seasons, to me, wildly underrated movie. Fred Zinnemann makes a couple appearances on this list. He
From Here to Eternity.
Just an incredible director. By the way, also directed Julia. Actually, you know what? He directed High Noon, so he has 3.
Yeah.
Zinnemann has 3.
Yeah.
But Man for All Seasons, I'd like one day to have conversations with people where we only do dialogue from Man for All Seasons, because it's that good. And I will also add, it's not a movie that people watch that much anymore. Go back and look at the scene between Orson Welles and Paul Scofield.
He plays the Pope, right?
No, he plays Cardinal Wolsey.
Cardinal, right. But he had the red, I remember he had the
writer and the whole thing. And I will say that the dialogue between those two, for me, is the best dialogue of any scene ever written. It's you got to watch it tonight. It's incredible. Citizen Kane. I'm just piling on
Is
here.
that Robert Bolt?
Yeah, that was Robert Bolt from his play. Robert Holt, who also wrote Lawrence of Arabia.
Right. Little side story. Sorry to interrupt.
Chicago.
I'm running Raystar, and we bought the book Burr by Gore Vidal about Burr, Hamilton, the whole thing.
Yep.
We've sold it to ABC Movies. Going to be a miniseries. Robert Bolt wants to write the miniseries. I call the executive at ABC and say, we've got Robert Bolt. And the executive says to me, who's Robert Bolt? That's Hollywood. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, that's the Jeff Sagansky, Fred Zinnemann story, which I'm sure you know.
Yes.
Okay, so Jaws. I don't know that a movie can be executed at a higher level than Jaws. Jaws, for me, goes in that list with some other movies on this list that are a little farther down. Back to the Future, Fatal Attraction. Pure popcorn movies that are executed at such a high level that they turn themselves into classics. Jaws absolutely is that for me. Kramer versus Kramer, you just can't get human behavior any better than that movie. I teach that script all the time. I teach Rocky all the time. Rocky is perfection.
I was just going to tell you a quick story about Kramer. In 1978, Kramer won Best Picture. In 1979 or 77, 78, I can't remember exactly, Ordinary People won Best Picture.
That was 79 and 80.
79 and 80, okay, you got the dates right. Kramer versus Kramer did 200 million at the U.S. box office. Ordinary People did 50. And I always thought, for me, tell me if I'm right or wrong, in Kramer, even though they both had, family stuff, in Kramer, Benton let you off the hook and you laughed and you cried and then he sucked you back in. Whereas Ordinary People, you were like this the whole time. And I think audiences enjoy being moved and back and forth. Think I'm right?
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, Kramer versus Kramer it's just stunningly good. All right, so let me tell you a little thing about context and why context matters in a movie, okay? And I talk to screenwriting students about this all the time. I'm gonna pitch you a movie, and you tell me if you're interested in that movie, okay? Ready? We'll see what kind of executive you are and what kind of pitcher I am. All right, so there's this showgirl, and she meets a guy who's kind of gay, but they hang out for a while. And then they meet another guy who's really rich, but also kind of gay. And they hang out for a while. And then she gets pregnant, and then she has an abortion, and the movie's over. Okay? That's my pitch. Who's buying that pitch?
Nobody.
And I go up to you and I say, well, wait a minute. What if I set that same story in 1930 Berlin against the rise of the Nazi Party? And I'm going to call it Cabaret. Now who's it? Right? Think about what context does that movie. The most tawdry story ever, but set in that context. All the characters become archetypes, and all the emotional colors come out, and everything becomes so freighted with dread. You want to reach through the screen and say to those characters, don't you realize what's about to happen here? Don't you know you're about to be witness to the greatest murder in the history of the world? Like, shake yourselves. Context is everything in that movie. It's one of the best directed movies you'll ever see. It was Fosse at his absolute best. The stage play had been phenomenal. It's a Wonderful Life. Bananas, how great it is. Chinatown. You could make the argument one of the 4 or 5 best screenplays ever written. Polanski at his absolute best, making a movie that had something so dark to say about the human condition. Because essentially that movie, if you boil it down, that movie says the rich get away with murder. That really is what the movie's saying. And yet it's so heartbreaking and so entertaining. And then Butch, this is the beginning of William Goldman putting himself up there on the Mount Rushmore of screenwriters. I don't know that you could find 2 better movie characters than Butch and Sundance, and the way that it was shot.
Connie Hall.
Connie Hall, just, oh my God, going from sepia to color. And the other thing about Butch that I love so much, and I talk to screenwriting students about this all the time, is it's really George Roy Hill's best movie. But part of what's so amazing about it it has such incredible metaphor to it. And by that I mean they're being chased by this super posse that has no face.
Who are those guys?
Who are those guys? Who are those guys? Who are those guys? They're very good. But name me a movie where you never see the bad guy. I mean, it's never been done before and it's never been done since, okay, ever. And of course, the super posse is their past catching up with them. It's why they can never outrun it. It doesn't matter if they go to Bolivia. Of course, the super posse is going to be there again because their past is going to find them wherever they go. They're going to have to pay for their sins. That's pretty ballsy screenwriting. It's miraculously done. Okay, so.
All right, we're going to the top 10 now.
So number 10.
All the President's Men.
Okay. There was a long stretch of my career where I had this number 2. That's how much I love All the President's Men. That's how seminal it was for me as a writer-director. You know, I've only directed 5 or 6 times, and 3 of them have been in D.C., where I go out of my way to pay tribute to All the President's Men every time. Very, very tough to name a movie as successful as this that did not have a love story. And of course, the love story is kind of between those 2 guys, but it's about something so important. It's shot so beautifully. The screenplay is nuts. By the way, also Alvin Sargent. It's Bill Goldman's credit, but Alvin Sargent wound up in a hotel room with Pakula, reworking the last third of that movie. The thing about that movie, as if there's only one, there is a 6.5 minute slow push on Robert Redford in that movie where all he does is make 2 phone calls. There are no cuts. It's 6.5 minutes pushing in on a guy talking on the phone.
And I will guarantee you that was Gordon Willis's idea.
I guarantee you, you're absolutely right. And, but try that with someone who's not a movie star. Try putting a camera on someone who's not a movie star for 6.5 minutes and having your audience give a damn. It cannot be done. There are certain people that you can do that with, and it's a pretty small handful in movie history, but they did it. That's Pakula at his absolute best. What a team, what a time. Top rate. Okay, number 9.
Number 9, Schindler's List.
It's very hard for me not to have this in my top 5. It is one of those movies that I watch every year.
I just watched it again.
It's absolutely perfect. It has such restraint. It's so beautifully told. Steve Zalian wrote the script. Oh my God, what a job he did. Liam Neeson and Sir Ben, incredible performances. This is, my hat is always off to Spielberg, but this really is his best. And I don't even know a movie to compare it to.
The ending of the real people putting the stones on the grave, I still cry. I mean, you just...
It's shocking. And speaking of my son, when he was 12, I started to show him all the great movies, and this was one of them. And my wife said to me, "You think it's too much for him?" I said, "Well, we're going to find out." So I showed him Schindler's List one night, and we talked about it. And then I woke up in the morning, and I went downstairs, and he was sitting in front of the TV saying, "Can we watch it again?" And that was pretty rewarding. All right, what's number 8?
Amadeus.
Okay.
Milos.
This is a ridiculously underrated movie. It did win Best Picture, I think, in 1984. Peter Schaffer wrote the script. This is a perfect movie. It's about something really interesting, envy. Salieri, incredible lead character who is, so loathsome in so many ways and yet so compelling. I have to say, Mozart's kind of the bad guy in the movie. from Salieri's point of view. What a great bad guy.
Tom Hulce was brilliant.
Tom Hulce was brilliant. F. Murray Abraham, brilliant. Every frame of it is beautiful to look at. Every word of it is perfectly crafted. The costumes, and of course the way they used Mozart's music. Milos Forman, you know, when you think about his career, you think about this and Cuckoo's Nest. I happen to love the movie Hair. I love the movie Ragtime.
See, if you haven't seen his Czech film, Loves of a Blonde.
Never saw it.
Find it.
Okay, so that's how his American career happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just one of the greatest filmmakers.
And then he did a movie. Then he did a movie called Taking Off here with Buck Henry here in the States, late early 70s.
Okay, all right. What's number 7?
Sunset Boulevard.
Okay, so this is where I land on the Sunset Boulevard versus All About Eve debate. Okay, I was very, very fortunate to meet Walter Mirisch when I was first becoming a writer, like 1988, 1989. And you know, you go into Walter Mirisch's office, and you know, he uses Golden Globes as
Bookends.
bookends. Thank you. The word left my head. But we were talking about Sunset Boulevard, which was not his movie. And in 1989, he said to me, "If you made Sunset Boulevard today, it would be daring." Can you imagine how daring it was in 1950 to make that movie, to tell that relationship between those characters? It's, I don't know what to say about that movie. Norma Desmond is, you know, one of the greatest characters of all time. This is Billy Wilder just with a laser beam digging into his characters and exposing their behavior and their flaws. You know, when you get that studio note as a writer, hey, can we make the character more likable? You kind of want to send them a DVD of Sunset Boulevard and say, it's really not about making them likable. It's about making them compelling. It's about making their behavior, their human behavior, recognizable. I don't know that anyone ever did that better than what they did in Sunset Boulevard.
Walter Mirisch did have something to do with the next one, The Apartment.
We're now getting into the pantheon of, you know, the holy of holies in these movies. You could easily make the argument that The Apartment is the best movie ever made. It doesn't have the size of some of these other movies. It's not epic in that way, but just in terms of character and tone, it's another one of those. You watch it and you just say, how did they do that? How did they do that? How did they think of that moment with the compact, with the broken mirror inside, which is, you know, one of the greatest reveals in movie history. You know, Jack Lemmon, C.C. Baxter, what a character. And just, you know, I talk all the time to students about, if you want to expose what a character is, give them dilemma. Just keep giving them tough choices to make, and we'll find out who they are under pressure. You know, look at the choices this guy has to make over and over again in that movie. It's one great revealing dilemma after another. And by the way, good for Billy Wilder. He gets number 7 and number 6 in my top 10.
Wait, Fred McMurray, between that and the one with Barbara Stanwyck, what a shit.
Postman always rings twice.
No, not Postman. Double Indemnity.
Double Indemnity, right.
Right, sorry.
All right,
Okay, so we move on from The Apartment.
The top 5 now.
Number 5, The Graduate.
Okay. I go back and forth between 5 and 4, and we'll see when we get to 4, which should be over the other. And on any given day, I could flop these two. The Graduate, when I think about the moment in time in which it was made, 1967, same year as Bonnie and Clyde, and In the Heat of the Night, by the way, not a bad movie year. And yet somehow they're nominated.
And also nominated was Dr. Dolittle.
Dr. Dolittle, yeah. And and the Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn.
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, right. So, and Mark Harris wrote that incredible book called Pictures at a Revolution about those 5 movies.
And Raging Bull, something or other. That other book that, what's his name wrote?
Oh, yeah. Easy Riders and Raging Bull.
Right. Sorry.
So The Graduate, when I teach my class and I talk to them about, again, about metaphor, and I say to them, okay, why does Dustin Hoffman's car have to run out of gas at the end of The Graduate? Why? And they never know. And I say, because his parents gave it to him, right? The entire movie is about rejecting his parents' values. There's no way that something his parents gave him can solve his problem for him. He's going to have to solve it on his own. And they plant in Act 1 that he's capable of it because they keep calling him the track star. So you know he actually can run that distance to get to the church. It's easily the most ironic ending in the history of movies, and so ballsy to tell that story and end it in that way with that look. It's the look of those.
Murray Hamilton, Anne Bancroft.
The look of those people on the bus. Anne Bancroft, who's a year older than Dustin Hoffman and playing Mrs. Robinson. It's wickedly funny. It's, I don't know that there's ever been a better use of popular music in a movie. Mike Nichols kind of invented that.
They didn't have that score the first time they screened it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he brought it in.
Yeah, it's, and look, Dustin Hoffman shows up a lot in the movies on my top 100. But this is completely seminal work.
Okay. We're going to have to move on now.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
For Annie Hall.
Okay. So you can see why I flip back and forth between Annie Hall and The Graduate, because you could easily make the argument The Graduate's 4 and Annie Hall's 5. I saw Annie Hall when I was 15. I didn't know a movie like that was possible. Think about this, what the idea of that movie is, thematically. He meets a woman who's kind of a mess and turns her into someone who is strong enough to leave him. I don't know what to say. I've been writing for 32 years. I've never had an idea that good in my life on a character level. It's perfectly directed. It's so damn funny. It's another great Gordon Willis effort. Every performance is great. He brings in animation. He jumps back and forth in time. He breaks the fourth wall and talks to the camera. He stops characters in the middle of the street and starts interviewing them. There's just nothing like it. It's that movie you could watch over and over again, and it gets better every time you see it.
Okay, number 3 happens to be my number 1. Because it's written by Howard Koch, which, by the way, is no relation to me or my father.
I know.
And the Epsteins. But I just watched it again the other night. I don't know if I guess I didn't tell you. We were going to watch something else and Casablanca was on. I said, well, let's just watch a few minutes. And we couldn't turn it off.
That's your night.
Tell me about what you love about Casablanca.
There's nothing not to love about Casablanca. Again, you can make the argument it's the best screenplay ever. You could easily make that argument. Incredible performances. You've got a character at its core who has something about him that's broken, that only that movie can fix. He tells you exactly what it is. I stick my neck out for no one, right? I'm the only cause I'm interested in. This is a selfish man. And he is an archetype for America before it gets into World War II. Like, we're not sticking our neck out for anybody. That's someone else's fight. We're not going to be a part of it. That's who Rick Blaine is. And then he gets exposed to this story because Ilsa comes to town. And he gets his heart broken all over again. And by the end, that thing about him that was broken has been fixed. And he becomes America after Pearl Harbor. He becomes ready to become part of the fight. And it's, again, I'm repeating myself. It easily could be number 1. It's absolutely perfect. Michael Curtiz, who also directed Angels with Dirty Faces. Beautifully, beautifully directed movie. It looks great. It's funny, which is surprising since it's got Nazis running all over the place, and Ingrid Bergman's face. How do you beat that?
Number 2.
Yep.
We're off to see The Wizard of Oz.
Okay, so in my fantasy of fantasies, I make a movie that 80 years later, people still revere. That it still has something to teach us. It's still beautiful. It's still moving. It's still funny. That movie is so stunningly good. When I teach screenwriting, I tell students before the class, I say, here are 6 movies you better know inside and out. You better know Jaws, Rocky, Silence of the Lambs, Kramer versus Kramer, Wizard of Oz, and number 1 on our list.
Number 1, Godfather.
Greatest movie ever made. There's no argument about it. It's perfect on every level. It is beautifully directed, beautifully shot. The Prince of Darkness, Gordon Willis, again. Great performances, great music, great costume, great everything. But the real reason why I think it's the best movie ever made is because in the first 30 minutes of that movie, you've got the wedding reception, and everybody looks the same. They're all in black and white. And Michael comes in, and he looks different. He's in his army uniform, and Kay with a big floppy red and white hat. And he tells her the story about Luca Brasi and his father, and she's appropriately horrified. And he says the most important line in the movie, which may be the most important line in movie history. He says, "That's my family, Kay, that's not me." Meaning, I don't want to turn into my father. That's his conscious goal. What makes that movie so great is that his subconscious goal is in direct opposition to it. He is dying to turn into his father. He can't wait to turn into his father. So you've got what he says he wants versus what he actually wants, and it's these 2 tectonic plates pressing against each other, and the movie's going to be over when one of those triumphs. One of those values is going to come out on top. And it does. Of course, he becomes his father, and we know that not because he kills the head of the 5 families, but because he lies to his wife, which is why the last shot of the movie is the door closing on her. He has chosen his fake family over his real family, and he has declared who he is as a character. And once again, character and story, the exact same thing. No movie ever did it better than The Godfather.
How many times did you, this is not a horror film, how many times did you jump in that movie where you just couldn't believe?
Yeah, that's another one of like, how did they do that? How did they do that?
From the nurse crossing frame in the hospital.
Yep.
As you pulled back. From the explosion in Sicily.
Yep.
From the shooting of Sterling Hayden. I mean, just on and on and on. Each month you go, oh my, how did they do that?
Right, and of course there's that famous telegram that Coppola's agent sent to him during the shoot. Don't quit, make them fire you. Because everyone thought it was going so badly. Never give up. There will be people all through your career who tell you you are really screwing this up. But you never know, you could be making The Godfather.
Billy, I've spent a long time in this business, and this hour and a half has been one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in my life.
Me too.
I really mean that. You're amazing,
Thank you.
I so appreciate you doing this for us. I just brilliant.
Oh, you're the perfect person to do it with. Give yourself a hand. There's no one else I could have done this with. Thank you, and to everyone who's out there watching, I love you. I care about you. I'll do anything I can for you.
And you will. Yeah, Bob, did you want to say something?
First of all, I share number 1 with you. So
thank you.
Bless your heart. Bless your heart. And I want to say, people who don't get mentioned in all these films are editors. And if you talk to people who worked on The Godfather, an awful lot of that movie was made in the editing room. Yeah. They are the unsung heroes frequently of our business. I want to give a shout out.
On my movies, my editor is a guy named Jeff Ford. I think he's the best editor in the business.
Yeah.
And he has saved my ass 3 times.
Yeah. And this was an hour and a half film history course. I feel so blessed. I texted Hawk before to say, send me the list. Because I'm embarrassed to say I haven't seen some of these or haven't seen them in so long that if I did see them, I don't remember seeing them. And
I'm going to take MASH out and I'm going to put in.
No, do not do that.
Make it 101 and just add It Happened One Night. That's all.
I mean, I agree with Hawk. I mean, for people of an age, that movie is, was so powerful, right?
I know.
Jen, Freda, anything you wanted to?
Oh,
you're muted.
Yeah, actually, I do have a question since you've done both mediums now. What's your feeling about doing movies versus the multi-episode medium?
Well, screenplays have been very, very good to me. I mean, screenplays gave me a career for a long time, and I love them. But there's something about the forced economy of 110 pages versus, I have an entire year or 5 years to arc a character. That's a lot of fun. I mean, over the course of the pandemic, because I didn't want to be watching news all day and freaking myself out, I wrote season 1 of a show. And that was a great treat. Like I wrote 10 episodes of a show that I'm now going to go out and sell. You never get to do that when you're writing a screenplay. Ever.
Yeah.
To have that much time to arc your characters, it's pretty special. And I also think there is some ground that the feature business has surrendered to television that I hope it will reclaim, but I see no signs that they're actually trying to do.
Thank you.
I have a couple of quick things. First, thank you for putting Amadeus in your top 10. I think that is a brilliant movie.
Of course.
It's dessert, and it's just beautiful, beautiful. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to say kudos to Bob Mirisch, whose show is coming up next. His lecture series on Westerns is in its 2nd episode today. He got Do Not Forsake Me, as did Lindsay on Facebook. Good job for getting us the trivia question there. And Lindsay thought it was the Jack of Hearts for the Manchurian Candidate, and Bob said it was the Queen of Hearts.
Queen of Hearts.
Queen of Diamonds.
Queen of Diamonds, sorry.
Oh, so everybody got it wrong. Queen of Diamonds. So It Happened One Night, I agree with you, should replace MASH. I was a little surprised that with your love of William Goldman, we didn't see The Princess Bride on this list at all.
You're absolutely right. That is a horrendous oversight that I now have to think about. Okay.
Billy, will you think about The Conversation as well?
Yeah, I love The Conversation. I love The Conversation. I'll give that another think.
I also, this is a conversation for another day, and I really hope that you come back to Organized Chaos for maybe like the best of the worst list.
Sure.
Because for me, best of the worst, hands down, Xanadu. I will watch Gene Kelly and Xanadu a million times.
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with you for a long time until I strolled into a theater and watched Cats.
Oh.
And that was a game changer for me. If you want to feel your life force literally being sucked out of you, that's the movie to go experience.
I went to a PGA screening of Cats and was forever, unfortunately, changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably is what caused COVID.
Yeah, but Billy, that's an interesting conversation because Rob Marshall is a fantastic director. He's made some really, really good movies.
Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah, and how does that happen? Something like that happen?
Oh, he didn't make that. That was Tom.
Right.
Oh, Tom Hooper.
But
right.
yeah, but Tom Hooper.
Les Mis.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tom Hooper is a talented director. I mean,
the failing.
I'm not a huge fan of his Les Mis. I'm not a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of The King's Speech.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For me, the failing was what everyone wrote about in terms of the uncanny valley. There was just too much that was beyond your willing suspension of disbelief, and it was not anamorphic enough and too anamorphic, and yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't see
Anthropomorphized, sorry,
Xanadu or Cats.
You haven't lived.
I don't see those movies.
No, you have to see Xanadu. I'm going to get you the DVD of Xanadu.
Yeah, you haven't lived. And while you're at it, go check out Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band,
Oh, that I've seen.
which had my great uncle in it, George Burns.
Hey, excuse me. I made Honky Tonk Freeway. Want to see a lousy movie? Don Schlesinger, who did Sunday Bloody Sunday, Darling, Marathon Man, and Midnight Cowboy.
Schlesinger did Honky Tonk Freeway?
Yes.
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, look it up.
Sorry, there's no way. There's no way.
We do have to hand it over
yeah,
to
you
Bob
go.
Marish, but the other thing I will leave you with in terms of a question, a little bit of Stanley Kramer on your list, but no Hitchcock.
Yes.
That's true. Vertigo and Rear Window are both on.
Yeah.
I missed I did not write those down. How did I miss them? They were in the top 90.
Yeah. Well,
They were in the
I'll
top
send
90.
you
Okay.
the list.
All right.
Well, no, I'm going to rewrite my list now.
Oh, okay.
I got to find room for Princess Bride. It happened one night in the conversation. God damn
All
it.
right. Billy, I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you had a
Thank you.
good time.
Bye, folks.
You had fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.